Good evening to all of you. We're starting with a new topic in India and the world, and India and major powers. In that context, we are talking about starting with the Sino-Indian relation, India's relationship with China. Okay? My focus will be not on the descriptive portion, that is, uh, you know, I will not be putting focus on what is the educational relationship, uh, what is the people-to-people relationship. The descriptive portion I will not be focusing on. I'll be focusing on the problematic areas from where you are likely to get some questions, because this is a very complicated kind of relationship. Sino-Indian relationship is very complicated kind of relationship. As we have been discussing during our India's discussion on India's foreign policy, that Pakistan and China, they are the two major challenges, the first two major challenges for India's foreign policy. And we have still not been able to resolve them. Okay. And the problems becomes more acute, more serious because of Sino-Pak proximity. China and Pakistan, they are, acting in connivance with each other. The Sino-Pak proximity. China supports Pakistan even for a wrong reason, like, for example, declaring Masood Azhar or any other terrorist who has attacked on, who was instrumental in attack on India, and ensuring that they are not declared as an international terrorist. So China has been providing support to Pakistan even on this issues. So it's a very complicated relationship, and the relation becomes more complicated because of some other factors, because it is not simply a bilateral relationship. It is not simply a bilateral relationship. It is a bilateral relationship influenced by several other powers. So you cannot understand the relationship between India and China without understanding the relationship between China and US. So the relationship between China and US has its impact on the relationship between India and China. Or India's relationship with US, India's closeness with the US, okay, also impacts India's relationship with China. So it is, though we are talking in terms of a bilateral relationship between India and China, but there are several issues. There are other countries which are also involved in this relationship. So this relationship cannot simply be understood by understanding the relationship between India and China, but for this, we also need to understand the influence and the role of the other countries or the impact of other relationship on Sino-Indian relationship. All right. For example, all right, let us try to understand. We are talking about Sino-India relations, India's relationship with China. See, basically, we say that past is shadowing the present. Now, why I'm saying past is shadowing the present? Because whatever happened between the two countries in 1964, there was a replication of this in the form of Galvan Treasury. Now, basically, past is shadowing the present. Hence, we say history repeats, and that is what exactly happening. So the complicated relationship that we had in 1962, all right, the China attacked India, all right, and since then, if I would tell you from 1962 till 1988, so if you can divide this relationship between pages, say 1950, 1947, and till we talk about 1960, during these years, we had a good manageable relationship, good manageable relationship we had. All right, because it was built on some kind of trust. 1954, even though China had annexed Tibet, India was slightly suspicious, but still we managed, So 1954, there was an agreement, a pencil agreement between India and China, and based on that, it was going off quite well. Only in 1962, when China attacked India. Now, why China attacked India? Why China attacked India? Let's give you a historical background, then I'll come back to the main thing which we are discussing. In why 1962 China attacked India. If you look into the reasons for this, what you will find is that, see, there was some territorial claim of China over India. Particularly, China wanted some control over what is known as Arunachal Pradesh, Tawang area, Tawang, Tawang area. China wanted control over this. A part of Arunachal Pradesh, China wanted a control over this. And India's refusal, India's refusal to accept that there is any dispute between the two countries. Let me tell you briefly about the history. What happened is, one thing is that in 1914, there was a Simla agreement. And there were three parties in that. British India was one. Okay. China was the second. And Tibet was the third. All right. Three parties. And that was to decide about the fate of Tibet. All right. And in the Simla agreement, China was a part of that. It was declared that Tibet is an autonomous territory. All right. And Tibet considered that Tawang and Arunachal Pradesh, these areas at that point of time, they were a part of India. It was very clearly declared that they were a part of India in that Simla agreement. China, it was a part of British India at that point of time. Tawang, Arunachal Pradesh, it was declared to be part of British India. And Tibet was an autonomous territory without any kind of control of China. So Tibet was a kind of buffer state between India and China. And I'm sure you are aware of that. At that point of time, India had a military presence in Tibet. British India had a military presence in Tibet. And even the entire post and telegraph department of Tibet was managed by India. All right. So we had a good control over Tibet. All right. A very good relationship. A similar agreement which was signed, the Tibetan Autonomous Territory, which was rejected by China. China refused to sign the similar agreement. That was signed in 1940. All right. Since then, China was keeping an evil eye on Tibet. All right. So we got an opportunity, and in 50s, you find that China occupied forcibly annexed Tibet. China annexed Tibet, and it changed the geography, and changing the geography means Tibet, which offers to India and China, that gave China an open, that gave China a border with three states, three countries. One was Nepal, okay, another was Bhutan, and third was India. All right. So virtually, it provided China an access to three South Asian powers, three South Asian nations. All right. Dalai Lama, after China's annexation of Tibet, Dalai Lama crossed over to India along with 1.10 lakh of supporters. You are aware of that. And he was given a political asylum, and the problem started. The problem between India and China started at that point of time. All right. Now, I was trying to answer the question, why in 1962 there was a clash? The main reason for the clash was Nehruji's policy of no dispute, no recognition. Nehruji refused to concede, refused to accept that there is any territorial dispute between India and China. All right. When China underwent a revolution in 1949, and after the revolution, they came out with a map of China, and in that map, several portions of Indian territory were shown to be a part of China. The new map, which was released by China after it underwent the revolution in 1949, so several Indian territories, particularly in Northeast, in Arunachal Pradesh, they were shown to be a part of China. Now, this was protested by India. When India protested on the map released by China, they assured that we will look into your objections, and if at all there is any discrepancy in our map, we will rectify that. They assured. And Nehruji got relationship that China will do that. When nothing happened, again a reminder was sent to China, and they said that we have looked into our map. There is no discrepancy in our map. So whatever part we have shown to be part of China, that is a part of China. So Nehruji. Why? Because Nehruji refused to concede, refused to accept that there is any territorial dispute between India and China. They thought that in order to make India understand, in order to make India accept that there is territorial dispute, you have to accept that. So India's refusal to accept that there is any territorial dispute between India and China, that led to the incursion in 1960. They entered 48 kilometers inside Arunachal Pradesh at other places, and then they voluntarily had withdrawn. They had withdrawn. But the point is, that was the reason of 1962. And when I said past is so during the present, again we are going back to the same kind of phase, and the relationship right now is in a very complicated state. Correct. So almost from 1962 till 1988, there was almost a Cold War relationship between India and China. All right. Minimum interaction between the two countries. So very tenseful moments for the two countries. It was only in 1988 when Rajiv Gandhi became the prime minister, right, that he thought that without improving relationship with China, it is not possible for India to grow. So he went to China. Rajiv Gandhi was the prime minister who went to China and then started a normalization of relationship. Both the countries agreed that border dispute is something which cannot be solved immediately, but let the two countries interact on the other area, on the other core areas, so that the relationship could improve. All right. So we started working on that, and 88 onwards until this Gulf tragedy happened in 2020, till this Gulf tragedy happened. So the relationship was absolutely becoming normal between the two countries, and so all lot of credit has to be given to Rajiv Gandhi and followed by all other prime ministers, because something which was started by Rajiv Gandhi was continued by all the prime ministers. All right. Kind of template was developed. Template means the kind of mold. And whatever the template, understanding that border disputes we will resolve in due course of time, but till it is resolved, let there be peace and tranquility on the border, right? And let there be normalization of relationship between the two countries, and that's how it started. Right. If you are not able to read something, I'm changing the whiteboard. If you are not, just point it out immediately, you know, if you are not able to make out. All right. So that is the background how it started, and I just give you a historical background. Now I'll come to the core issues. But before I do that, what I was trying to tell you is that Sino-India relationship depends on several other countries, depends on other relationships. Sino-US relationship, it depends on that. It depends on Indo-US relationship, it depends on that. It also depends on Indo-Russian relationship. Why? Because China, Russia, Pakistan, all right, they are in a kind of pact, they are in a kind of alliance. But when? So anything that happens between two countries, the relationship between countries impacted by, for example, Indo-US strategic partnership. Now China feels that Indo-US strategic partnership, Indo-US partnership is just for the purpose of neutralizing China, countering China. Or China feels that the Quad, India, Japan, Australia, US, this Quad, this is again for the purpose of countering China. Not when. So in order to neutralize US, as I've told you that, in order to neutralize US, Russia and China, China and Russia, they have come together. All right. So meaning thereby that Sino-India relationship cannot be understood in isolation. It has to be understood in its totality, and it depends on several other relationships. All right. So that is what it is. So we need to understand this relationship from a different perspective. All right. So it is not simply a bilateral relationship. All right. For example, yes, if you talk about India-Bangladesh relationship, largely it is bilateral relationship, but yes, again, there is the impact of China in that. All right. But here in Sino-India relationship, there is the impact of several other powers. It also, for example, Indo-Pak relationship. Indo-Pak relationship also impacts Sino-Indian relationship. All right. Or Sino-Pak relationship again impacts Sino-Pak relationship, China-Pakistan relationship again impacts Sino-Indian relationship. You know what I mean? So it is a very, very complicated relationship. All right. Now, moving further from here, so what I have told you is this relationship can be divided into phases, as I have already told you that 1947 till 1960, 1962 till 1988, and 1988 till 2020 and 2020 onwards. Now this is almost same. All right. Now, all right. So I said 1947. Now you are able to see. Is it visible now? I don't know. There is some problem with sitting. See, other classes, I never experienced this problem. I don't know. No? Are you able to see now whatever there on the board? It's visible now? All right. So we'll have to erase it every time. It will take a lot of time, All right. So what I was saying is that this is 1947 till 1960s. From 1962 till 1988. Then 1988 onwards. All right. Now, 7 till 60, there was a good workable relationship. We have been able to manage that. All right. Even after annexation of Tibet, we were able to manage this relationship. But 62 to 88, it was absolutely a Cold War-like situation. And then 88 onwards, okay, again, a workable relationship. All right. So, see, from 88 onwards till 2020, so it was almost a bullet-free border. You try to understand. We had a more problematic relationship with Pakistan. All right. We had a more problematic relationship with China. There is a border issue with China. Despite border issue being there, it was absolutely a bullet-free border till 2020, till the government list. All right. So why? Because a new template was started in the two countries in 1988 by Rajiv Gandhi when he went to China, that both the countries agreed that border issue will take time to resolve. Until it gets resolved, let our relationship will become normal. So let there be a normalcy in relationship. Let there be peace and tranquility on the border. So that is why I said it was absolutely a bullet-free border, bullet-free border with China almost for so many years. All right. But now, as I have started with the statement, past is shadowing the present. We are going back to this phase. All right. The situation is still very complicated. Right. Now, see what we need to understand when we talk about Sino-Indian relationship. We need to understand that every country has its foreign policy. Every country has its perception. China has its perception about India. India has its perception about China. And to understand the Sino-Indian relationship very closely, we need to understand China's perception about India and its impact on Sino-Indian relationship. I'll be mentioning some factors. All right. First important factor, I'm just trying to discuss China's perception about India, because that has an impact on its relationship with China. All right. First point is that China considers India as a rival. China considers India as its rival in its global aspiration, because only two countries in the world, China and India, they remain largely unimpacted or unaffected by the economic slowdown. Or in other words, the two countries that were least affected or least impacted by the global economic slowdown in the world, they were India and China. So what impacts China's relationship with India is China considers India as a rival. India, a rival of China. Now, what India thinks becomes immaterial. India will never think China as a rival, right? We have always tried to normalize the relationship. But China considers India a rival in its global aspiration. Hence, China wants to become a global power, and in that, it considers India as a rival, because India is the second country after China which was least impacted by the global economic slowdown. Right. The first important. Second point that we need to understand is that China is following absolutely a foreign policy, what we call Chanakya's foreign policy. China is following Chanakya's foreign policy. And what is that foreign policy? That foreign policy is, if you have to deal with your rival, in order to deal with your rival or in order to deal with your enemy, you have to develop friendship with enemy's enemy. In order to deal with a rival, you have to develop friendship with enemy's enemy. All right. So that is what explains Sino-Pak proximity. No, Sino-Pak, China-Pakistan proximity can be explained in this Chanakya's philosophy. What was Chanakya's philosophy? In order to deal with your rival or in order to deal with your enemy, you have to develop friendship with the enemy's enemy. Okay. So if India is a rival or enemy of China, so if India is India is a rival of China and China wants to deal with India. So to deal with India, China will develop friendship with enemy's enemy. Who is enemy's enemy? China's enemy is India, India's enemy is Pakistan. Now, this explains the close proximity between China and Pakistan. This is a part of China's foreign policy. What's the point? Third important point that we need to understand is China gives an extraordinary importance to its foreign policy. All right. Because for China, foreign policy is a tool for economic prosperity. For China gives extraordinary importance to foreign policy. Why? Because foreign policy is a tool for economic prosperity of China. So China's foreign policy is more about expansion of trade, expansion of its trade relationship. You are aware of that. It's the kind of insistence which China gives on BRI or OBOR project, or the kind of trade which China has with other countries of the world. So for China, foreign policy is a trade policy. And foreign policy is a very important for China. They give extraordinary importance to foreign policy because for them, foreign policy is a tool for achieving the goal of a global power. All right. What a point. So India is not able to give that much focus to its foreign policy as China is giving. So that is the point you need to understand. One more important point when we talk about China and its perception is that China has the mentality of being superior. The point. China has got a superior mentality. China considers itself as to be superior power. What a point. So China has the mentality of being superior. And with this kind of mentality, it believes that it has got a natural power. It has got a natural power. It has got a natural right to rule over the world. Right. So the feeling of superiority, okay, feeling of superiority, that it is an exceptional kind of power. It is superior kind of power. That also explains and governs China's relationship with India. All right. And this kind of perception, self-perception about its superiority gets impacted, gets reflected in China's foreign policy. You must have seen that. The overconfidence which China has. All right. So this kind of superiority complex gets reflected in China's foreign policy. All right. One more important point is that China Sino-US relationship is at a very complicated phase right now. There is a fall, there is a dynamic, there is a decline in Sino-US India's relationship with China, with the United States of America. Now, what happens is that China believes that US will never allow China. US would always try to prevent China from occupying a place in global politics which it deserves. What a point. So China feels that US will never allow China to occupy a place that it deserves. Right. So in that sense, China has Indo-US partnership, Indo-US strategic partnership, which both the countries have entered. That is interpreted by China as an attempt to prevent China or to neutralize China. So, and that will have an impact on India's relationship with China. So they feel that US propping up, China feels US is propping up India to counter China. China feels that US is propping up India to counter China. So this also has an impact, all right, in the relationship with China and India. All right. One more important point. China is still nurturing the ambition of being a part of G2. Means China believes that Russia is a weekend power now. So China still is nurturing the ambition. There are the two major powers of the world. US is the one and China is the second one. So China is nurturing the ambition of making the world G2, converting the world into G2, great two powers, and China should be the second one. All right. And when US enters into a partnership with India, China feels that it is trying to counter China. US and India, they're trying to counter China. So this G2 ambition is also getting impacted in its foreign policy. All right. One more important point that we need to understand that China is a country, India is a major soft power in the world, but China is not that China doesn't have soft power, but China uses its soft power by converting it into hard power. This is very important point, and that impacts the relationship between India and China. China is using the soft power by converting it into a hard power. How? For example, it will provide aid to the third world countries or South Asian countries, right? Or the aid which it provides or investment which China makes in the third world countries or in South Asian countries. What is impact? By giving them aid, by giving them assistance, by investing in their economy, it's trying to put these countries into a debt trap. And many countries in development have put into a debt trap. All right. So what I'm telling you is that China, so aid is a soft power, trade is a soft power, but when you, in your policy, you want to use this trade, you want to use this aid, or you want to this investment that you are making by converting into hard power. Now, if you put a country into a debt trap, first to provide them aid, first to provide them assistance, and then you put the country in a debt trap. So that's why I said China has a policy of converting a soft power into a hard power and then using it. So that is a kind of reflection of China's foreign policy. Right. Again, if we talk about China's insistence on BRI, or if we talk about CPAC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor project which China has done, what is the motive? What is the motive? The motive is to the motive of China-Pakistan economic trade. I had told you the other day that the total trade deficit between India and China would be about 55 to 60 billion US dollars. So you take trade surplus from here and then you use it against India, starting a CPAC project, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor project, and that too from a Pak-occupied Kashmir. All right. And the last point about the China's perception about India, which I want to make here is China never considered India seriously. China never gave importance to India in its foreign policy from the beginning. It considered India as a culturally confused and chaotic country. All right. A country having so many religions, so many cultures, so many languages, so many diversities. All right. So it never took India seriously. So when India started rising, okay, China was not able to digest India's rise because in its diplomacy, it never gave any importance to India. But when India started rising, when China saw in India a competitor, a rival, so that changed China's foreign policy towards India. Right? Because a country like China, which did not give much importance to its relationship with India or its diplomacy with India, and when it saw that India is growing and rising so much, so a kind of complex, I have told you, China has got a superiority complex, and it can never tolerate other countries growing. All right. And that also is something which impacts India's relationship between the two countries. Right. All right. Yes. So, yes. Now, so I've told you the background that 1988 template that was developed. Template is basically a kind of mold, a kind of pattern that we develop in our relationship. And this pattern, as I've told you, continued till 2020, till the Gulf tragedy happened, mold continued. That border dispute will take time to resolve, and till then, let us normalize our relationship. The two countries started trading with each other, and educational, cultural, all other relationship developed. I'm not going to put a focus on that. When you get the material, you will find everything there. Okay. Now, so what was that template? You can get a question that the template has been broken. Explain. All right. So this continued for 34 years. 1988 complete was 30 to 34 years. And it was agreed that it is not possible to resolve the border dispute within any short span of time. So let the negotiation be continue. And till then, till we resolve the issue, let there be normalcy in the relationship. Right. Let us try to understand before we go further. But what were the reasons for this? The question can be asked. What happened in the relationship between the two countries that the template or mold that was developed, or pattern that was developed, which was followed by all the prime ministers that followed after Rajiv Gandhi, what happened all of a sudden that this template was broken? What led to the recent debacle on the border or the border clash between the two countries? What were the reasons for that? All right. Number one, despite China trying its best in UN, China being a permanent member of UN Security Council, despite China trying its best to stop Masood Azhar being declared as an international terrorist. China tried its best. They could not stop. China could not stop Masood Azhar from being declared as an international terrorist because of the support which India got from US, UK, France, Germany. So all these countries, they provided us support and they built up a pressure on China. And ultimately, Masood Azhar was declared terrorist. So failure of China's attempt, all right, in preventing the declaration of Masood Azhar as international terrorist, means the other powers that supported India on this issue, US, France, Germany, UK, the four, I mean, these powers that supported India on this issue, four major powers supporting India. So China became slightly disturbed with this. The support of Western powers, open support of Western powers to India on the issue of Masood Azhar being declared international terrorist. All right. This is the first important thing that we need to understand. All right. The second important factor that I would like to mention here, what we are discussing, why this template was broken. What happened in the relationship between the two countries that led to the Gulf War. You must be remembering that there was a Doklam crisis between the two countries. Doklam crisis. Doklam is a border dispute between Bhutan and China. India has got nothing to do with that. But the point is, the Doklam is on the tri-junction of India, Bhutan, and China border. It's on the tri-junction. And this area is not very far off from the Siliguri corridor. It is not very far off from Siliguri corridor. So any trouble here, okay, could be Siliguri corridor is the only link, between the Northeast and mainland India. All right. So when China started building roads on the disputed border in Doklam between Bhutan and China, right, we are also aware of the fact that China had a border dispute with 13 countries of the world. It has resolved border dispute with 11 countries. Now, the two major disputes which it has to resolve, yet to resolve, one is with Bhutan and another with is India. All right. So in Doklam crisis, India took up the cause of Bhutan because Bhutan was not capable enough to protect its territory. All right. So it requested India, and India took up the cause of Bhutan. So Doklam crisis, and there was a standoff on the border for almost more than 70 days between Indian troops and the Chinese troops. So, and ultimately, Chinese troops, they had to make a retreat. They had to go back. All right. So Chinese troops had to make a retreat, and this was again a country which has got so much of a superiority complex. So Doklam crisis also became one of the reasons, and defeat of China, withdrawal of China, retreat of China from the Doklam, that also became one of the reasons for crisis between the two countries. So this means what I'm trying to tell you is a tough posture adopted by India on the border. So what I'm trying to tell you is India's tough posture adopted by India on the Doklam, and also during the Gulf War, also Indian troops were adopted a very tough posture. So tough posture adopted by India was something which China could not tolerate. Right. And India tried to expose the expansionist foreign policy of China. What China did in Doklam, what China did in Gulf. So India tried to expose China, the expansionist policy of China. All right. All right. Okay. Other factors, we can the emergence of Quad. Emergence of Quad was again something which China was very reactionary to that. China thought the Quad is directed against China. All right. So means Quad provided a kind of future coalition between India, Australia, Japan, and US. It's quadrilateral cooperation. So China thought it could lead, it could be a possible coalition of forces against China. All right. So that is the one of the important reasons. So Doklam standoff in 2017, uh, and after that, uh, India's tough posture on the border, emergence of Quad, that was also relationship. Right. That was also a factor, and border development activities on Indian side. You know, so border infrastructure on the Sino-Indian border. Border infrastructure on the Sino-Indian border, okay, was not very good. All right. China had developed border on its own side, but when India started developing the border infrastructure on its sides, it undertook activities for developing a border on its own side, on its own side. So China thought India is preparing an attack on China, or India is trying to strengthen. So this was not taken as a good. So border developmental activities on Indian side, China made China suspicious that what India is up to, what India is trying to do. So that made also China suspicious about India. We are just speculating the possible reasons. Uh, we are speculating the possible reasons for the border debacle between the two countries. All right. S-400 deal between India and Russia. All right. S-400 deal between India and Russia, that also is could be a factor. Then Indo-US strategic partnership. Indo-US strategic partnership could also be explained as a factor. So it's just trying to speculate. If you're asked a question, what were the possible reasons for a board recent Gulf tragedy between the two countries? All right. Then India's stand on BRI, OBOR and BRI project. India's refusal to join the BRI project of China. All right. India's refusal to join BRI. So when almost every other country, they have joined the BRI project of China, and India's refusal to join this. Because you see, if India is not willing to join the BRI project, so in the Indian Ocean region, see, the success of this BRI project depends on whether India is a part of that project or not. Because India is a huge market. All right. So whether India is a part of, so China has been trying to convince India to join the BRI. India's refusal to join the BRI. Okay. Then India's refusal to sign the RCEP project, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Project, which involves 14 countries, China, ASEAN, and a host of other countries, Japan being a part of that. So India's refusal to sign this RCEP, a free trade agreement of 15 countries, and India's refusal to sign that. And why? Because the main reason for India not signing this treaty is China. Because India is already facing a trade deficit with China, and if India joins RCEP also, all right, if India also joins RCEP, that could further lead to a trade deficit with China. So India's refusal to RCEP is also one of the reasons which China is not able to digest. All right. All right. So it is a cumulative effect of so many factors. All right. Then India's decision to change the status of J&K unilaterally, the abrogation of Article 370 by India. China and Pakistan, they are good friends. Sino-Pak proximity there. So India, despite Jammu and Kashmir being a disputed territory, all right, and India's decision to unilaterally change the status of Jammu and Kashmir by abrogating Article 370, converting a special state into a union territory. This was something which was also against a kind of independence assertion of India, a very assertive policy of India. That is also one of the reasons which China was not able to digest. All right. So Indian government's decision to change the status of Jammu and Kashmir was also one of the probable reasons for this. All right. Then China wanted, see, indirectly, COVID-19 had a very complicated situation in China. In order to divert the attention of the people, some people say that, in order to divert the attention of Chinese public from its failure to deal with COVID-19. According to some critics, some evaluators, the attack on India, the Gulf tragedy, could also be because of China wanted to divert the attention of Chinese public from its failure to deal with the COVID-19. Right. So that could also be explained as one of the reasons. So to divert the attention of the public opinion, to divert the attention of the public opinion from its failure to deal with COVID-19. Right. And one more important point I could tell you, China wanted to project by attacking India. China wanted US to understand that China is capable of taking a decision independently, and China has the guts of attacking one of the closest partner of the US. All right. So it wanted to show its strength, show off. China wanted to show its strength. China wanted a show off of its strength, that to the US, basically, showing off strength to the US. China wanted to show its strength to the US that China will not hesitate even attacking the close ally of the United States of America. So that is a kind of what China tried to do. All right. All right. So these are the probable reasons. These are the probable reasons for the kind of the problem that we had recently, relevant tragedy we had on the border, or the border standoff that we had, and continues. The border standoff still continues. These are the probable reasons. I've given you the main reasons for that. All right. Now, what China wanted to show to India, what kind of signal China wanted to give? If this is the question, through this Gulf tragedy, what kind of signal China wanted to give to India? All right. Signal that China wanted to give. What kind of signal China wanted to give? Right. To establish, use a symmetry of power between the two countries. China wanted to I'm trying to answer a question. What kind of signal that China wanted to give to India through Gulf tragedy? So first point I said that to establish a huge asymmetry of power between the two countries. China wanted India to know that you are no match to us. There is a huge power gap. There is a huge power differential between China and India. China is a far more powerful country than India. So this kind of the power gap that exists between two countries, China wanted to make India understand that there is a huge asymmetry of power between China and India, and that India must understand. All right. Second kind of thing, China wanted India to know that China is, even though we are negotiating on the border dispute between the two countries, despite there being a border dispute between the two countries, and despite the ongoing negotiation between the two countries, China wanted India to understand uh, that China is capable of unilaterally decide and define its border. Go to point that, see, when the border negotiation between the two countries is already an ongoing process, what was the need for China to attack the Galwan area? What was the need? See, the need is China wanted India to know, and not only India to know, China wanted US also to know that China is capable of unilaterally deciding its border. Without waiting even for the border disputes to be resolved, China can act independently, China can act unilaterally and define its own border. That is the message it wanted to give. All right. The third probable signal that China wanted to give, China wanted to establish a regional hegemony in Asia. China wanted to establish its regional hegemony in Asia. That could be. So if you're asked a question, what kind of signal China wanted to give through its attack on India, right, that could be. So I've given you the three important signal that China wanted to give. Any question if you have so far, whatever we have discussed, is there any doubt, any question you want to ask? What was India's reaction to this? How did India respond? What was the policy reaction of India? Let us try to understand how India responded to this crisis. What was India's response? All right. See, how did India respond to this, which was not liked by China? So first point, we are talking about India's response. All right. India adopted a very tough posture, which was again not liked by China. India adopted a very tough posture and exposed China's expansionist drive at multilateral forums, at different multilateral forums. All right. India exposed China's expansionist drive or China drive. All right. Good military response. India gave a very tough military response to China. All right. Banned several Chinese apps. Several Chinese apps were banned by India. India banned several Chinese apps. All right. Imposed restriction on Chinese companies. Chinese companies working in India, there was a restriction on them. All right. It was ensured that no Chinese firm will be able to win any competitive bidding. Any competitive bidding that takes place, okay, any tendering activity that takes place, Chinese companies will not be allowed to win that tender. So it will ensure that they are not able to win any competitive bidding. So that was a deliberate policy of India. All right. Now, one more important point. All Chinese FDI in India will have to be routed through government agencies. Means, otherwise, Chinese private investment by Chinese private companies would get an automatic approval. But now it was ensured that no Chinese FDI proposal, all Chinese FDI proposals will have to be routed through government. Without government approval, it cannot be there. All right. Put a point. So these are the kind of reaction, these are the kind of action India started putting focus on what is known as the Atmanirbhar Bharat. That is also the point you can mention, and Atmanirbhar Bharat, though I have earlier told you that implementing the Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme may not be very easy for India. You know the reasons for that. So India gave a very tough response to what China did. All right. And so if you ask a question, what was India's response to these are the points that you need to write. All right. Means India wanted, but taking a tough posture. And the last point I wanted to make here is India made it very clear. All right. Right now, this policy change is that China wants India to continue its normal relationship, but India has made it abundantly clear to China now that you cannot expect normalcy on the border. You cannot expect a normalcy in our relationship so long as there is no peace and tranquility on the border. So you can't expect the previous template that was there in 1988. The template once broken, it will be very difficult to put that template to work again. It will be very difficult. It will be very difficult unless and until there is a peace on the border. So China has been made very clear to China that don't expect a normalcy in relationship. But the reality is that China is very keen, China is very keen to improve its relationship, build up its relationship, normalcy of relationship in India, because every year it gets assured about 50 to 55 billion trade surplus. On the point, every year it gets about 50 to 5 billion trade surplus, and which is very essential, which is a very important component of China's policy, So this is the reality. So China wants to normalize the relationship, but we have made it very clear that the relationship cannot be normal unless and until China is ensuring that there is a peace on the border. So the standoff on the border, though we are trying to improve the situation, but the standoff on the border continues. And now since winter is setting in, what is going to happen in future? Because China has always tried to exploit the winter season to enter inside the Indian territory, right? So we need to be careful about that. Right? Now, before we talk about the major issues between the two countries, my focus will be on the major issues between the two countries. But before I do that, the first important issue between the two countries, if I can tell you, is the border issue. Right? Let us some time I want to spend on the border dispute between the two countries, and then we'll talk about the other issues as well. See, if there is a Johnson line, 1865, we have different borders, different kind of border lines we have. Johnson line, 1865, all right? Then we have a MacDonald line. It was there in 1893. And then we have a McMahon line, 1914. Three border lines. All right. Johnson line, 1865. This was accepted by India because it declared Aksai Chin to be a part of India. Aksai Chin is an area which is now under, since 1962, it is under the Chinese control. Right. Now, Aksai Chin in this border line, Johnson line, which was prepared in 1865, had declared Aksai Chin to be a part of India. So India is very comfortable with this model, but this borderline is rejected by China. Why? Because it declares Aksai Chin to be part of India. Then the second boundary line, we have the McDonald line, signed prepared in 1893, and this explains this borderline was built at China this time, and this describes Aksai Chin, okay, to be a part of China. Aksai Chin in this boundary line is described to be part of China. So this is not accepted by India, but accepted by China because this describes Aksai Chin to be part of China, but rejected by India. Then we have a McMahon Lane, 1914 Shimla Agreement. I have already told you in the beginning about that. All right. This declares, okay, Tibet to be an autonomous territory. I have already said that. This is about the Shimla Agreement, Tibet to be an autonomous territory. All right. And Tawang and Arunachal Pradesh, another area, Arunachal Pradesh, they are declared to be part of British India. All right. I've already told you in the beginning about that. And since this area declares Tibet to be an autonomous territory, so India wanted, and this is the line in 1962 when China entered inside India, they crossed over McMahon line, about 40 kilometers inside, but they unilaterally, when they made a withdrawal, there was no accord, no peace between two countries, but they unilaterally withdraw from this borderline. And this is the borderline that separates Arunachal Pradesh and China. All right. And this McMahon line had declared Arunachal Pradesh to be a part of British India and now part of India. Now, my question is, if this was not the real boundary line between India and China on the northeastern side, then why did China withdraw from this line in 1962? At that time, they could have continued here, but they exactly withdraw from this line. All right. So these are the three kind of border lines that we have. All right. Now, let me quickly talk about the border issues related to this border dispute between India and China. Any confusion on this? Do you have any questions on this? No questions? All right. Now let us try to understand where we have a border issue. What are the border issues that we have? All right. So if we talk about the border issue, let us first put the western sector. In western sector, Aksai Chin is the main problem we have. This Aksai Chin is an area totally uninhabited. You are aware of that. Earlier, it was a part of Jammu and Kashmir, but since 1962, it is under a part of Chinese control. All right. And India has declared Aksai Chin to be a part of India. So there is a dispute on Aksai Chin between the two countries. And right now, this is part of Xinjiang region of China. All right, Aksai Chin has Xinjiang region for China. And India claims its control on Aksai Chin. All right. Then we have another area in western sector. This is called SHKS-GAM, Saksgam Valley. No, this is an area, Saksgam Valley, which was captured by Pakistan and gifted to China. All right. India is laying a claim on Saksgam Valley. This was the area which was captured by Pakistan and Pakistan gifted it to China. All right. So this is also area which India claims. All right. Then we have a third area of dispute here. It is called Daulat Beg Oldie. No, this is a tehsil. Daulat Beg Oldie is a tehsil in the Leh district. Leh Ladakh, it is tehsil there. And it is under India's control, but China is laying a claim on this. So in western sector, we have three disputed areas. One is Aksai Chin, which India claims. Then there is Saksgam Valley, which India claims. And there is Daulat Beg Oldie, which is under India's control, but China claims on that. Then we have eastern sector. dispute on the eastern sector. In eastern sector, we have uh, about Arunachal Pradesh, about 90,000 square kilometers of the area we have, and China is laying a claim on entire Arunachal Pradesh. They have declared it to be a part of southern Tibet. All right. In fact, China, the stand on the border is kept on fluctuating. Earlier, it used to say claim only Tawang area, but now it says the entire Arunachal Pradesh is a part of southern Tibet, is a part of China. All right. They consider it a part of southern Tibet. All right. So this is the area of dispute between the two countries. All right. Now, on what basis, though this question, will not be asked to you, but you will be having a question in your mind. On what basis China is laying a claim on Arunachal Pradesh? On what basis China is laying on Arunachal Pradesh? Okay. The basis on which China is laying a claim on Arunachal Pradesh, number one, that it has got a predominant Tibetan population. China has got a predominant Tibetan population, right? That's why they call it southern Tibet, and they have given a Chinese name of this Arunachal Pradesh. They call it Zangnan. It is called Jiangnan province. Jiangnan. This is the Chinese name of Arunachal Pradesh. So they call it southern Tibet. One reason I have told you that why China, on what the China is laying claim, they say that it has got a predominant Tibetan population and it is a part of southern Tibet. Then it says that there is Tawang monastery, and there is a close tie-up. Tawang monastery, Tawang is a part of Arunachal Pradesh, and there is a historical tie-up between Tawang monastery and Tawang monastery and the Lhasa monastery in Tibet. Okay, there is a historical tie-up between Lhasa monastery in Tibet and Tawang monastery. There is historical connection. They have given there is a documentary evidence of a connection between Lhasa monastery and Tawang monastery in Tibet. All right. So that is the basis on which they are saying that it's a part of southern Tibet. All right. Now, then the third region which they give, which is sixth Dalai Lama of Tibet. Sixth Dalai Lama of Tibet was born in Tawang. If Tawang was not a part of China, then how come sixth Dalai Lama of Tibet was born in Tawang? So sixth Dalai Lama of Tibet was born in Tawang. All right. That is why Tibet is a part of, Tawang, Arunachal Pradesh is a part of China and a part of southern. So this is the reason. See, we have to understand one point very clearly, that under no circumstances India could make any compromise on the issue of Arunachal Pradesh being a part of India. Under no circumstances. There are reasons for that. First reason is security to Bhutan. This is very important. Arunachal Pradesh provides a security to Bhutan. It's there in between, provides security to Bhutan. All right. If Tawang is occupied by China, all right, Bhutan will be surrounded by China. The geographical situation is such, if China is able to capture Tawang of Arunachal Pradesh, then entire security of Bhutan will be threatened, and Bhutan will be surrounded by all sides by China. All right. And which will be very unfavorable for India, because particularly keeping in the northeast, if Bhutan gets surrounded by China, because if Tawang becomes a part of China, so it will be, from security perspective, it will be a major challenge for India's north. Second important, I'm trying to give the reason why under no circumstances we can allow any compromise on this of Arunachal Pradesh. Second point is, in future, if there is any conflict between India and China, and since Arunachal Pradesh is at a very short distance from China, it will be a situation of advantage for India and disadvantage for China, because India can use Arunachal Pradesh as a launching pad, for attacking China or for countering China. All right. So it will be India, Arunachal Pradesh could be used as a launching pad for attacking China and also for building up its defense, All right. So this is a very important reason that in future, any air operation by China, all right, Arunachal Pradesh provide India a multi-layered security ground, So one point. And one more important point is occupation of Tawang by China will give China easy access to Siliguri corridor. So I'm just trying to give you a reason that why Arunachal Pradesh is, from security perspective, is very important for that. So China might have declared Arunachal Pradesh to be a part of southern Tibet, but it's very important for India and we cannot make any compromise. Right. So after border dispute, let us talk about some other factors, some other issues between two countries. All right. All right. Tibet issue. You are already aware that Tibet is annexed by China. All right. We can add to this the Dalai Lama factor. Unfortunately, even after annexation of Tibet, and even after so many years, China's control on Tibet is still not complete. I mean, China's grip over Tibet is still not complete. This is the point you need to understand. Despite China having been talking about one China policy, China's control on Tibet is not complete. Why? Because Dalai Lama is still alive in India and Dalai Lama is still worshipped in China. Sorry, worshipped in Tibet. Now, China is very suspicious because Dalai Lama is already there in India, but he has also formed a government in exile. And Dalai Lama and China is very suspicious that at any point of time, India could provide a support to Dalai Lama, right? And a kind of revolution, because Tibetans, they highly respect Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama is still worshipped in Tibet. So China is suspicious about India's possible role in Tibet. And China could support, India could support Dalai Lama to do a revolution in Tibet. So China is highly suspicious about, and because India has provided a political asylum to Dalai Lama. So you have to understand the strategy. See, the border issue between India and China is only a garb. Main issue between India and China is Tibet issue. Got my point? And you must have seen that every time Chinese president or any Chinese high officials they visit India, there is huge protest against them by the Tibetans in India. There is a huge number of Tibetans in India. All right. Got my point? So Tibet issue is only, the border issue between India and China is only a garb. It is only a disguise. Border issue only disguise. The main issue is Tibet. And let me, you can take my word that the border dispute between India and China will not be resolved so long as China's grip on Tibet is not complete. All right. Now, if Tibet is a part of China, without Arunachal Pradesh being a part of Tibet, what a point. They say that Arunachal Pradesh is a southern Tibet. They're saying that Arunachal Pradesh is southern Tibet. What a point. Now, and Tibet is a part of China. So how can Tibet be a part of China without southern Tibet, that is Arunachal Pradesh, being a part of that? Are you point? This means they talk about one China policy. That is why they issued Chinese names of all major cities of Arunachal Pradesh. All right. So, without Tibet, if Tibet is a part of China, and if Arunachal Pradesh is southern Tibet, then how can southern Tibet be a part of India? That is the game plan. All right. So their claim on Arunachal Pradesh, they are not very. See, they will do nothing. Border issue will remain there, and border issue will remain there so long as China's control, China's grip on Tibet is not complete. Number one, and maybe till Dalai Lama is alive, the situation will continue like that. All right. Without Tibet being a part of China, if Tibet is not a part of China, suppose, for example, if Tibet is not a part of China, then there's no border between India and China. If Tibet is not a part of China, if Tibet is an autonomous territory, all right, then there is no border between India and China. So main issue is Tibet issue. All right. So China will not settle the border issue with India unless and until it has got a total control, total grip over Tibet. All right. And if they leave their claim on Arunachal Pradesh, if they leave their claim, if they abdicate, if they forego their claim on Arunachal Pradesh, that will weaken China's claim on Tibet. That will weaken China's claim on Tibet, because China has already declared Arunachal Pradesh to be part of southern Tibet. The point. So China is highly suspicious about India's motive on Tibet. So main issue, what I'm trying to tell you is that Tibet issue is the main issue, and the border dispute between India and China is only a disguise. All right. Let us talk about some other issues between the two countries. I've talked about the border issue. I've talked about the Tibet issue. Let us find out what are the other issues between the two countries. All right. The Dalai Lama issue also have talked. All right. Any question if you want to ask? All right. There is a stippled visa issue. Stippled visa. See, Arunachal Pradesh and J&K. China doesn't consider J&K and Arunachal Pradesh to be a part of India. They consider it as a part of a disputed territory. You are aware of. So any citizen from Arunachal Pradesh and any citizen from J&K, if they want to visit China, the normal process of visa is that they would be sticking a visa on your passport. All right, that is the normal issue, normal method. But if any citizen from Arunachal Pradesh and J&K, they want to visit to China, their visa would not be stamped. Their passport would not be stamped. They would be attaching a separate seat, okay, on the passport, both in case of J&K and Arunachal Pradesh, right? And on that seat would be, the stamp would be put on that seat. So visa is issued on a separate seat. That is why it's called stippled visa. So just in order to irritate India, just in order to make India realize that both Arunachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir is a part of a disputed territory. So this is, and India has always been protesting against that, but the issue remains between the two countries. All right. Now, so there is stippled visa issue. All right. Now, growing Sino-Pak nexus against India. What is the meaning of this? Growing Sino-Pak nexus against India? Growing Sino-Pak nexus against India. China and Pakistan, they are conniving with each other against India. All right. China is using Pakistan as a pawn for troubling India. You are aware of that. We have absolutely no problem, China and Pakistan's alliance. But this point is when this is used against your India, this is used against India, this alliance is used against India, this alliance is used against India's interest, so we have got a problem with that. So growing Sino-Pak nexus against India, the way China has been supporting Pakistan for every wrong reason, you are aware of that. All right. So that is also one of the factors, growing Sino-Pak nexus between the two countries and how it is troubling India. All right. Now, key package with China-Pakistan economic corridor issue. Despite knowing that despite knowing that Pak-occupied Kashmir is a disputed territory between India and Pakistan, the China allowed this China-Pakistan economic corridor project to cross via Pak-occupied Kashmir. The project crosses to Pak-occupied Kashmir. Hence, China has been deliberately made a third party in a bilateral dispute between India and Pakistan. All right. I hope probably you are knowing a reason for this, why CPAC project and why Pak-occupied Kashmir has become a part of it. The main reason for this, if I go tell you, and India has protested against that. How could China be a part of a bilateral dispute between India and Pakistan? So China has been deliberately made a third party. The reason for this is very clear. And the reason is that suppose in future, India takes up the issue of this Pak-occupied Kashmir to International Court of Justice, suppose, or the Bondi Tribunal of International Court of Justice. There is a international convention, there is an international law based on some convention that before deciding the fate of a disputed territory, because Pak-occupied Kashmir is a disputed territory, so there is a convention that before deciding the fate of a disputed territory, all right, the country which has done maximum investment in that disputed area, in that disputed territory, that country's interest has to be taken into consideration. This is a convention. So, if the issue is taken up by the Bondi Tribunal of International Court of Justice, so obviously China has made so much of investment in Pak-occupied Kashmir through the CPAC project. So, means China will automatically have a claim on that because China has a maximum investment. So, in order to ensure that Pak-occupied Kashmir is never settled in favor of India, this is what has been done. I hope you understand my point. So, there is an international convention that whenever an issue would come up to decide the fate of a disputed territory, so the first question would be, which country has done maximum investment in that area? So, automatically, it is China which has done maximum investment in that area. So its claim would always never be settled in favor of India. They wanted to ensure that. I hope the point is clear. So CPAC corridor and China being made a third party of that, that is also a matter of dispute between the two countries. All right. Water issue. Water issue between the two countries. What is water issue between the two countries? It is about see, a river which is known in China as a Sangpo river, when it comes to India, it is called Brahmaputra. You are aware of that. All right. Now, in fact, a river, Brahmaputra river, in China it is known as Sangpo. In India, when it crosses the border, it's known as Brahmaputra. Right. Now, this river is very important in India. 29% of the total runoff of Indian rivers, Brahmaputra is responsible for 29% of the total runoff of Indian rivers. You can well understand. So any decline in the flow of water in Brahmaputra, this is what we have experienced during the last few years. Right. So this river is responsible for 29% of the runoff of Indian rivers. And during last few years, there has been a continuous decline in the flow of water from that side. China has basically started diverting the flow of Brahmaputra river towards its other side. All right. Now, and this is a very key river, very important river for India for its, we have started a river linkages project, linking river protected river of that. And Brahmaputra river is very important for that. Right. And the more important point, 44% of the hydropower potential, Brahmaputra basin has a potential of 44% of the total hydropower potential of India. One point, Brahmaputra possesses about 44% of the total Brahmaputra basin. They possess about 44% of the total hydropower potential of India. And we know that the way we are giving emphasis on hydropower potential and any decline in flow, the continuous decline in flow in Brahmaputra is again impacting India's hydropower programs. All right. Now, China has very recently started constructing huge number of dams, and diverting the flow of water towards the water which was coming towards India. It has started flowing towards the other part of China, and world's largest hydroelectrical plant is being put up in Tibet. The world's largest hydroelectrical plant is being put in Tibet, being put up by China and Tibet, and that is also diverting. That is also reduce the flow of water towards India. All right. So basically, the flow of Brahmaputra river has been diverted towards the northwestern territory of China, and you know that we are under a kind of agreement that China has to provide us the information about the flow of water towards India, and we are paying a price also for that. We are paying a China price for providing this information. For the last few years, China had stopped providing us the information about the flow of water also towards India. Why? Because it is diverting water towards the northwestern territory. So it cannot give information because it has then started unilateral diversion of water. So water dispute also there with China. That's also one of the core issues between the two countries. All right. Pangong Tso Lake dispute. Pangong Tso Lake dispute. There's a Himalayan lake, and the border between the two countries crosses through this lake, Pangong Tso Lake, and in extreme winter, the lake gets converted into an ice, and unfortunately, the line of control crosses through the lake. This was the area where China was very offensive, particularly in 1962. And 45 kilometers of the area of this lake is under India's control, and rest of that is under control of China. In 1999, during the Kargil War, what had happened is that the troops that were there on the Pangong Tso Lake, they were sent to the Kargil area. All right. So China got in this an opportunity, and China built up a road. China entered inside the Indian portion of Pangong Tso Lake, and they built up a 5 kilometer of motorable roads inside Indian territory. All right. Because the Chinese side of the border is well developed, good infrastructure. Our side is not developed. Recently, we have purchased some motorable boats, and we are doing patrolling to the border. But the point that you need to understand is that the China is in the Pangong Tso Lake is an area of dispute and between India and China. Nothing more about that. And though there has no major war between the two countries, but there is a standoff. The standoff between the two countries several times, because The border line crosses through this lake and it's not very clear. So sometimes Indian and Chinese troops, they would come face to face, but it would be resolved. All right. So about 20 kilometers of the lake area, which is in Chinese control, India is laying a claim on that. I don't know. They will not, they ask you very strategic questions. They will not ask you question on, they can ask you what are the areas of dispute between the two countries. Right. Now, other areas of dispute between the two countries, Galvan area that we have already talked about, the Galvan dispute, border dispute that we have talked about. The basically on UN Security Council issue, UN Security Council, China is objecting to India's membership to UN Security Council. That is also an issue between the two countries. China is objecting to India's permanent membership to UN Security Council. China is also objecting to India's membership to Nuclear Supply Group. That is also an issue between the two countries. Right. Abrogation of Article 370, and India tried to change the status, unilaterally tried to change the status of Jammu and Kashmir. This was also opposed by China, and China gave a support to Pakistan on this issue. It is an internal matter of India. India claims Article Jammu and Kashmir to be an internal matter of India, and China doubling into the matter, and China giving a support to Pakistan on the issue of Article 370. That is also a subject matter of dispute between the two countries. Right? Quad and Indo-US strategic partnership is also a matter of dispute between the two countries because China considers Quad to be directed against China. All right. So Quad or Indo-US strategic partnership or Indo-US civil nuclear deal. So all these deals that India has entered with the US, including Quad, is China considers it to be having been directed against China. All right. Again, then banning of Chinese apps, some of the Chinese apps, or the action taken by Indian government after the relevant testing of the Chinese companies. So these are the issues between the two countries. They are the major issues between the two countries. Right. All right. I have told you OBOR or the BRI project, India's refusal to sign this project because a country like India not joining this project is raising a question mark on the legitimacy of the project. So China is very upset about India's refusal to join. Why India is not joining, we are aware of that. All right. So OBOR, India's refusal to join OBOR project, BRI project, is also a reason, is also an area of dispute between the two countries. Right. We have our own reasons for not joining it. Though India could get some advantage by joining this project, India could become a part of, India could become a part of, because this project is about integrating the trade. This project is about integrating the trade relationship among countries of the world. So India could get some advantage by joining this project, but India is not joining this project because of several reasons that I have told you. CPAC, which is a part of this BRI project, a part of BRI project. So India's objection to CPAC, China having agreed to this project, do this project in the Pak-occupied Kashmir, that is one of the issues. And China has been putting several countries, small countries, into a debt trap. That is the issue. We are already having a trade deficit with China, and this trade deficit could further grow. So that is also one of the reasons why we are not trying to be a part of this BRI project. So there could be several reasons. So India not joining BRI project is a major challenge to the authenticity of the BRI project, the major challenge to the legitimacy of the project. So if India joins, that would provide a legitimacy to the project. But India not joining, a huge country like India not joining, so that also is causing some irritant in the relationship between the two countries. All right. Now, yet another dispute between the two countries is about the trade dispute, trade dispute. What is the major dispute? If we can talk about just between January to November 2021, January to November, just 11 months. If I can give you this figure. Yeah. There was a rapid increase in the bilateral trade between the two countries. The total trade was about 114.263 billion US dollars. This is the total bilateral trade, January to November. Right. Out of that, India's import from China was 87.90 billion US dollars. All right. And export was just 26.35 billion US dollars. I'm talking if you know just of 11 months, first 11 months of January to November 2020. The total trade about 114.26 billion US dollars. Out of that, import from China was 87.9 billion $90 billion, and export was just 26.35 billion dollars. So total trade deficit, was about 61.55 billion US dollars. This is a trade deficit. This is the deficit against India. So I have earlier told you that always there would be 55 to 60 billion dollars of trade deficit between the two countries. So this time it was in first 11 months was 61.55 billion dollars of trade deficit. Now, why that is happening? Look into the export figure from India to China, just 26. Now, why this trade deficit? This means China is not allowing India to export its product fully to China. For example, pharma products, which you could have done. All right, Ayurvedic products. So there are many products which India could export to China, but China has restricted the import of those products from India. All right. So they are flooding goods in Indian market, but they are not allowing. So this is a trade dispute, is one of the major disputes between the two countries. And the point I made earlier, this trade surplus which China owns, they are using it against India. If you are doing if you are getting the trade surplus from India and you are using it in a project like the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor project, this means you are earning trade surplus from India and you are using it against India. Are you getting a point? So you are earning trade surplus from India and then you are attacking us on the Gulf. So the trade, this could be a very serious dispute between the two countries, trade dispute. And that is why this trade deficit, that is why we have refused to join even the RCEP. China did not like that. All right. So the trade deficit is a major issue between India and China. All right. And you are aware of the fact that India had imposed dumping duties on Chinese products. 93 products from China, they were put under dumping duties. Still, it has got no impact on India. So trade issue is one of the major issues, the core issues between the two countries. Right. Now, what we have to discuss now? What is left now? I had thought that in 2 hours I will be able to complete, but that's not possible. Tomorrow will take about another 45 minutes to complete this topic. What we need to discuss now is we'll try to find out an answer. What is the commonality between the two countries? Is there any possible of rapprochement? So we'll try to answer the question why India needs China and why China needs India. Okay, this is the question I will try to answer. Why China needs India and why India needs China. Then, what is the strategy that we have been adopting so far to deal with China? What has been India's strategy to deal with China so far? And what is the problem in that strategy? right? Because I have already discussed with you, I started with that why there was a standoff on the border, why government tragedy, what are the possible reasons for that, and why India changed its policy after that. And then after talking about the strategy that we have been adopting so far, we need to talk about the two different school of thought, you know, on India's relationship with China. What is their opinion? What India should be doing to deal with a country like China? What more measures could be taken to normalize our relations with China? All right. And the concluding part. So this we'll try to do tomorrow morning. So tomorrow evening. So when we start, first we'll discuss, try to find out answer to 2 questions: why India needs China and why China needs India. And then we'll take up what strategy we have adopted so far and what more is to be done. If you have any questions in your mind, you can just ask. Any question? Whatever China does, if you remember the very first part of a lecture, first part of my lecture, I've given certain points. What is the root cause of the problem between the two countries? What is China's perception about India? What a point. So the relationship is likely to continue like this. You can't expect a major improvement in the relationship because for India, the option is, because you see, you can't expect, because India is not considering China and its rival. India considers China as competitor, but China considers India as a rival. All right. So it all depends on how do you perceive, or what is your perception about the country. The situation is likely to continue like this, All right. And we can't expect, I don't expect any major change in China's attitude right now. The situation is likely to be like that only. And I've told you that China is a very suspicious country. China is a very suspicious country and it follows a very deceptive kind of diplomacy, right? So it will try to give a different kind of picture. It will try to give a different kind of picture and it will do something different. So China's diplomacy has been very deceptive, all right? So there is a reason for this. Why China is doing like this, I have also explained in detail the reason for this. So long as the Indo-US relationship continues to grow, so you can't expect any change. If there is an improvement in US and China relationship, you can feel its impact. You can feel its impact on it. If India's relationship with Pakistan improves beyond a point, you can feel its impact. All right. But the situation will continue like that because China is a very suspicious country. Its nature is like that. It is very suspicious about India. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, all of you. God bless you all. See you tomorrow, same time. Thank you so much.